The fog was thick, like a gray velvet curtain covering the sea. As I stepped onto the Rig 47 platform at dawn, the sound of waves crashing against the giant steel pillars below made the entire structure vibrate with a steady rhythm, like the heartbeat of a sleeping sea monster. I clenched my hands on the wet railing, trying to get used to the feeling of being off balance. My name is Kai Seorn, 35 years old, the main mechanical engineer for the new shift on this deck. With a tall, thin figure and gray eyes, I'm often teased by my colleagues as having dead fish eyes. I'm not the type of person everyone wants to be friends with, but that's okay. I came here to work, not to make friends. Seorn, a hoarse voice rang out from behind. I turned to see a big man with a wrinkled face and coal-black eyes. I am Tehran Crow, the head driller. You follow me. I silently followed Tehran through the narrow corridors. The smell of engine oil and seawater blended into a distinctive scent. Suddenly, it reminded me of my dad. He went missing on another rig in 1995 when I was 5. They said he was swept overboard in a storm, but his body was never found. This is the control room. Tehran stopped in front of a small room filled with machines and gauges. Before you start working, there are a few things you need to know. He pointed to a piece of paper taped to the wall next to the main control panel. The paper was yellowed and the edges were warped from the dampness, but the handwriting was still clear. Safety rules on Rig 47. Rule 1. No entry to Pipe C area after 11 p.m. Rule 2. Do not carve any name or characters on Pipe 12A. Rule 3. When you hear the hissing sound, stay still. Do not scream. Rule 4. Every shift must check vent number 7. Rule 5. No oil waste must be dumped into Tank B after 2 a.m. Rule 6. When the alarm rings 3 times, knock 3 times. Do not use the radio. Rule 7. Do not allow strangers on the rig. I finished reading the list and couldn't help but frown. These safety rules sounded more like a ghost story. "Just do what it says," Tehran shouted, startling me. "No questions asked. Those who ask too many questions don't live long on this platform." His eyes flashed with something I couldn't place. Fear, madness, or both. "Those are just superstitions," a cheerful voice came from the door. A young man, maybe 20 years old, walked in with a wide smile. "I am Ren, the electrical technician. Are you new?" "Kai Seorn," I replied, and shook his hand. Ren looked at the rulebook and sneered. "Trust me, I've been working here for 3 months and nothing has happened. The old men just like to scare newbies." "Ren!" Tehran roared. "Get out of here!" Ren shrugged, winked at me, and walked out. But as he passed the rule sheet, he suddenly raised his hand and tore off a small corner of the paper, right where rule number 6 was written. "Bastard!" Tehran rushed forward, but Ren had already run away. He turned back to look at me, his face pale. The fool. He doesn't know what he has just done. Alone in the control room, I read the list of rules again. As much as I wanted to believe it was a joke, there was something in Tehran's voice, in the panic in his eyes, that I couldn't ignore. My colleagues, besides Tehran and Ren, also included Moral Van, a quiet middle-aged man, and Luca Reyes, a young and enthusiastic recruit. The sun gradually set, dyeing the sky and sea a blood-red color. I stood on the deck, breathing the salty sea air, trying to dispel the unease. "Kai!" Marl called me from afar. "The night shift is about to start. Get ready." I nodded and turned back. But as soon as I entered the hallway, I heard it. 3 knocks, coming from somewhere deep in the bowels of the rig. Knock, knock, knock. My heart stopped. Instinctively, I looked towards the control room. The torn rule sheet was still stuck on the wall. Rule number 6. But there was no alarm. "Do you hear anything?" I asked Marl as he passed by. "Hear what?" Marl looked at me with confusion. "I just hear the pump." I shook my head, telling myself I was just being nervous. But as I entered the changing room, I heard the 3 knocks again, clearer and closer. Knock, knock, knock. And this time there was another sound, the chuckle of someone, or something, echoing through the cold iron pipes. My first night shift on Rig 47 had begun. At 22:47, when I was checking the pressure in the east pump area, the red alarm light started flashing frantically, but strangely, no siren sounded. "What the hell?" Marl ran in, his face covered in sweat. "What's wrong with the alarm system?" Just then, the radio on his hip crackled, and a strange voice rang out. "3 times have come." Marl looked at me in panic, then looked at the radio. "No! No way! Ren! He did this!" But before he could finish, the alarm suddenly went off. 1 ring, 2 rings. Then the 3rd ring never came. Instead, the entire rig fell into absolute silence. Even the sound of the pumps, the sound of the waves, all disappeared. And then, from the end of the dark hallway, 3 knocks sounded. Louder this time, more violent. "Don't," Marl whispered, his voice trembling. "Don't answer. Don't use the radio. Please." But in his panic, his hand accidentally pressed the radio's play button. The knocking stopped. For 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Then the iron door at the end of the hall began to shake, bulging as if something huge was trying to push from the other side. The metal groaned, and the bolts began to pop out. "Move!" I shouted, pulling Marl to run in the opposite direction. Behind us, the sound of ripping metal rang out, along with another sound. Not a roar, not a scream, but laughter. The mad laughter of dozens of voices blended together, and amidst the laughter, I clearly heard Ren's voice. "Welcome, welcome to Rig 47, where rules are everything." It started raining around midnight. Marl and I were still panting in the engineering room, the iron door locked tight. "We must inform Tyrone," Marl whispered, his face deathly pale. "Do not use the radio," I reminded him. "Rule number 6. We have to go find him directly." The ceiling light started flashing, off, then on. For a moment, I thought I saw a dark shadow pass by the small window in the door. "I can't," Marl trembled. "You don't understand, Kai. This is not the first time someone has broken the rules. Last year, a guy named Mark engraved his name on pipe 12A. That night, we only found his clothes, nicely folded, as if he melted from the inside." A loud noise came from above, as if something heavy was walking on the roof. "We can't stay here," I said. "Pump number 3 is having problems. If we don't fix it, the pressure will increase and it will blow." Marl stood up suddenly. "Pump number 3 is my responsibility. If it blows, the whole rig—" He looked at me, then at the door, and finally at the radio. I saw the struggle in his eyes. "No," I warned. "We can go together. No radio." But at that moment, the lights went out completely. I heard Marl gasp in the darkness, and then the crackle of a radio being turned on. "No!" I shouted, but it was too late. "Control center," Marl's trembling voice echoed. "Pump number 3 needs urgent repair. I need—" The radio suddenly gave off a shrill screech, and then went silent. The lights came back on, flashing crazily, and in that flickering light, I saw Marl standing there, mouth open, eyes staring into space. "Marl!" I called, but he did not respond. From the radio on the floor, another voice rang out. Not human, like the sound of wind whistling through teeth. Violation of rule number 6. Then the terrible thing happened. Bruises began to appear on Marl's neck, as if an invisible hand was squeezing it. He tried to breathe, but no sound came out. "No!" I rushed to help him. But my hand passed right through him, as if touching air. He was no longer there, not completely. Suddenly, the alarm bell rang. 1 ring, 2 rings. I held my breath. The 3rd ring never came. Instead, 3 familiar knocks sounded right behind me. Knock, knock, knock. I turned slowly. The iron door was still closed, but through the small window I saw a face. Skin as pale as death, eyes white, mouth moving. It was Ren, or at least the thing wearing his face. Knock 3 times, the voice echoed from the walls around me. I looked back at Marl. He was standing against the wall, eyes wide open, mouth open in an eternal, silent scream. Blood began to ooze from his eyes, nose, and ears. I have to knock, I reminded myself of the rule. I raised my hand to knock. But just before my fingers touched the cold metal, the door suddenly swung open. A blast of icy wind blew in, carrying the stench of blood and something rotten from the deep sea. The hallway outside was empty. "Kai!" I turned around and screamed. Marl was standing right behind me, but not the Marl I knew. His face was distorted, his mouth stretched down to his ears, revealing sharp, inhuman teeth. "Knock 3 times, Marl spoke, his voice like metal rubbing against metal. 4th. I backed away, hitting the cold wall. "Kai, where are you?" Terran's voice suddenly rang out from the hallway. "Don't use the radio! Follow my voice!" Without thinking, I dashed past the creature and ran towards the voice. Behind me, an angry growl echoed. Charon appeared at the end of the hallway, holding a large crowbar. "Down!" he shouted. I rolled to the floor as he swung the crowbar. The sound of metal hitting something soft was accompanied by a loud screech. "Stand up!" Terran pulled me up. "They cannot go far from the place of the violation." "But Marl, he was—" Terran nodded, his expression gloomy. "It's always like this. When someone breaks rule number 6, they get replaced. What you saw was not Marl anymore." When we returned to the engineering room, Marl's body was gone, leaving only a long streak of blood on the wall and the fishy smell of the deep sea. "Why?" I asked, still shaking. "What are they?" Terran sighed. Rig 47 was built on a place that should not have been built. There is something ancient at the bottom of this sea. We awakened it. The rules are the agreement. We follow them so that we can live. So why not abandon the rig? Terran sneered. You think the company cares? The oil is too precious. They accept losing a few people every year. To them, we're just numbers. And those who know the truth are paid handsomely to keep quiet, or they have accidents. I stayed silent. Somewhere in the darkness, I heard the 3 knocks again, reminding me of the price of carelessness. There are more rules than just those 7, Terran said, putting a hand on my shoulder. Follow them, and you will survive. The long night wasn't over. Rig 47 had many dark secrets, and I was trapped in the middle of a vast ocean. When morning came, we gathered for roll call. Marl Van wasn't there. No one asked. His name was crossed off the list. In the control room, the rule sheet had been repasted, the torn corner magically restored. The strong smell of machine oil reminded me of my father. I remembered the last night I saw him. He hugged me tightly and whispered, "Son, there are places where people should not go. Remember that." Now, standing on Rig 47, I understood. "Seorn," Teron called me. "Morning meeting." In the conference room, I noticed Luca Reyes, maybe 22, with a smile so bright it seemed out of place. "Hi," Luca waved. "I hear you're the new engineer. I've only been here 2 weeks. Have you seen those strange rules? The old men keep saying to follow them, but I think it's just a scare tactic." My heart sank. "We need to check the entire duct system in Area C," Teron started. "Luca, you go with Kai." As we walked, Luca pointed to a large yellow pipe. Pipe 12A. They said nothing can be engraved on it. But look, there's a bunch of names. Joe, 1987. Mike, 1993. Lee, 2001. I followed his gaze. The names were old and faded. "Don't," I warned when Luca took out his pocket knife. "Don't do that." "Come on, it's just superstition," Luca laughed. Before I could stop him, he had carved 3 letters into the side of the tube. L-U-C. Immediately, the air around him froze. "See?" Luca turned back and laughed. "Nut." His words were cut off when a drop of crimson liquid fell from the engraving, then another drop, then a stream of blood. Luca backed away, his face pale. Why is there blood?" The blood flowed more violently, forming a large pool. And in that pool I saw reflections, not of us, but of dozens of pained, distorted faces, mouths open in silent screams. "Run!" I screamed, but Luca stood rooted to the spot. I see them," he whispered. "Joe, Mike, Lee, they're calling me." Suddenly, Luca's feet began to sink into the metal floor grating, as if it had turned to liquid. He screamed, trying to pull his feet free, but the more he struggled, the deeper he sunk. "Help me!" Luca reached for me. I lunged for his hands, pulling with all my might, but something below was pulling Luca down. I looked down and almost let go when I saw pale hands covered in scales and seashells clutching Luca's feet from beneath the metal floor. "No, don't let go," Luca sobbed. "I don't want to die. I heard a loud crack, and Luca's hand slipped from mine. In a flash, he was pulled completely under, disappearing. The metal floor hardened again. He was gone, leaving only a long streak of blood on the wall and the fishy smell of the deep sea. "He was warned." I turned to see Teron standing there. "Why?" I roared. "Why didn't you stop him? You knew!" "I tried," Teron sighed. "But there are those who won't listen. Luca was one of them, as were Joe, Mike, and Lee, and all the other names on that pipe." I looked back at 12A and gasped. The name Luca had carved was gone, replaced with Luca 2025, the engraving already looking old and faded. "They collect," Teron explained, his voice low. "The fools who carve their names into the pipe become part of the collection. Their souls are forever imprisoned on the seabed, to serve it." "Serve what?" Teron looked out to sea. "There are things older than humanity at the bottom of this ocean. Rig 47 was built right on top of one of them. The rules are the only way we can survive." "Then why not leave?" I shouted. "You think we have a choice?" Teron turned to me, despair in his eyes. "Once you set foot on Rig 47, you are part of the deal. Leaving means breaking rule number 7, no strangers allowed on board. And strangers includes us trying to leave. We aren't prisoners, Kai. We're hostages." That night, I lay in my narrow cabin. Somewhere in the darkness, I heard a faint cry. "Kai, help me. It's cold." It was Luca's voice. I knew I shouldn't open the door. I knew it wasn't really Luca. "I'm sorry," I whispered into the darkness. "I'm so sorry." The calling gradually faded, but I knew it would come back. It always did. I began to understand why the old-timers on Rig 47 had such blank looks in their eyes. They had to live with the ghosts of those they couldn't save. The clock read 22:58, 10:58 p.m. "There's a problem at Pipe C," Tehran's voice was hoarse. "The sensor is reporting a leak." I looked at the clock. "But it's almost 11 p.m. Rule number 1. "I know the rule," Tehran snapped. "But if that pipe bursts, the pressure could cause an explosion. You have 2 choices. Go down and check now or let the whole rig blow up." I swallowed. "Hurry," Tehran said, handing me a flashlight. "You have 7 minutes. It's 2300, 11 p.m. I stood in front of the door to the Pipe C area, the lowest level of the rig. Opening the door, a blast of cold, damp air hit me. The smell of rotten seawater mixed with machine oil. I turned on the flashlight, revealing slippery iron steps leading down. When I reached the floor, my flashlight scanned the vast space. The sound of boiling water came from somewhere, but it was thick and pulsing. As I approached the pipes, the flashlight caught something strange, deep scratches on the walls, like the claws of a giant creature. And the scratches were wet, not with water, but with a black slime. "Kai Siorn," I froze. The voice from behind the pipes was hoarse, as if from underwater. "Who is it?" I asked, even though I knew I shouldn't. "Kai, son." My heart stopped. That voice, "Dad?" A dark shape moved in the darkness. "You shouldn't be here." The voice was closer. "Why are you here?" "Dad!" I walked toward it, forgetting the mission, forgetting the rules. "You're alive." Suddenly, all the backup lights in the area came on, blinding me. And in that light, I saw it. Standing less than 10 feet away was a tall, lanky figure dressed in the same work clothes my father had once worn. But when it turned around, I screamed. The face had my father's features, but the flesh was rotted away, covered in scales and sea ooze. The eyes were deep black holes with sea worms crawling out. The mouth was open, revealing rows of sharp, inhuman teeth. "Son," it said, its voice now a snarl, "I miss you." It raised its hand, not a human hand. It was a slimy tentacle with suckers. I stepped back, but my back hit a cold metal pipe. The tentacle wrapped around my arm. Where it touched, my skin felt like it was being eaten away by acid. "Stay with me," the creature roared. "Down here, warm and peaceful, forever." I swung the flashlight and hit it hard on the head. The creature hissed and released its grip. I rushed towards the stairs, blood dripping from the wound on my arm. Behind me came an angry roar and the sound of bending metal. Halfway up the stairs, the entire structure shook. The father creature was clinging to the ladder, pulling it down. "Can't escape," it roared. The stairs began to collapse. I jumped and grabbed the edge of the floor above, my fingernails scraping as I tried to pull myself up. The creature shot out its tentacle, wrapping it around my leg. "No!" I kicked hard. The creature howled, letting me go. I rolled onto the floor and kept running. The clock read 23:11, 11:11 p.m. I had broken the rule by 11 minutes. As I slammed the door to Pipe C shut, I heard a loud banging from inside. "Lock it!" Tehran appeared, holding a large iron bar. He bolted the door just as it was about to swing open. The beating gradually weakened and then stopped. "What did you see?" Tehran asked, looking at the wound on my hand. It looked like my father." Tehran nodded. "They read memories, know what will make you weak." "You knew it," I said, anger flaring. "It wasn't a leak, was it?" "It was not a leak," Tehran admitted, "but you needed to know. You needed to understand why the rules exist. Now you do." I wanted to punch him, but my injured arm burned like fire. The flesh where the creature touched had turned black. "Hurry to the infirmary," Tehran said. As the doctor bandaged my wound, I heard knocking from the Pipe C area, echoing through the ducts. 3 steady, patient knocks. They were waiting. The next morning the sea was unusually rough. Waves nearly 30 feet high pounded the rig. I stood in the control room, my arms still sore. The storm wasn't in the forecast, Edgar Moss muttered. Appeared from nowhere, as if the sea is angry. I glanced at the rule on the wall. Rule 4. Every shift must check vent number 7. This morning's shift started at 6 o'clock. It was now 8:30. In the chaos, no one remembered to check. Moss, I called. Vent number 7. The alarm suddenly blared. The red light flashed. Tehran rushed in. Rogue wave, he shouted. 15 meters high. 2 minutes to impact. Everyone get down. Before he could finish, a giant wall of water appeared outside the window. And in the heart of the wave, I saw them. Not just water, but strange shapes, black shadows writhing. The wave crashed down, tilting the entire deck at a 45-degree angle. I was thrown against the wall. Seawater poured in, cold as ice, carrying the stench of blood and rotting flesh. "The vent!" Tehran screamed. "Someone has to check vent number 7. But before anyone could react, another sound rang out. Not the waves, but a screech. The sound pierced the brain like 1,000 needles. Glass shattered. Electronic screens exploded. "Stay still," Tehran yelled, remembering Rule 3. "When you hear the hissing sound, stay still. Do not scream. No one move." Everyone froze. The screeching continued, near and far. Then I saw it, through the broken window. A giant eye, as big as the room, pale yellow with a vertical pupil. But the pupil was made of hundreds of smaller eyes, opening and closing. It stared at us. Edgar couldn't bear it. He screamed and ran for the door. "No!" Tehran reached out, but it was too late. As soon as Edgar moved, the giant eye contracted. A tentacle as big as a tree trunk shot through the window, wrapping around him. Edgar screamed, but the sound was cut off as the tentacle tightened. Crack! Blood sprayed like rain. Edgar's body was crushed. The tentacle dragged his mangled body out, disappearing into the darkness. There was a chewing sound, followed by the sound of crushed bones. "The vent," Tehran whispered, still not daring to move. "Someone must go, or else." As if in response, the whole deck shook, not from the waves, but from something wrapping around the steel pillars below. "It's squeezing the deck," someone whispered. "It's going to crush us like a beer can." The screeching died down and then stopped. We stood in tense silence, no one daring to move. A minute, 2 minutes. Maybe it was gone. Before Moss could finish, the wall suddenly bulged, the metal cracked, and a giant maw covered in spiraling teeth burst through. It opened like a hellish flower to reveal thousands of rows of sharp teeth spinning like a meat grinder. "Run!" Tehran yelled. Everyone scattered. The tentacle swept across and swallowed 2 people who couldn't avoid it. Their screams echoed from within the monster's belly, then suddenly stopped, leaving only the sounds of chewing and grinding. I ran for the exit, but another tentacle smashed through the wall and wrapped around my leg. Sharp thorns pierced through my calf, blood spurting out. I screamed in pain. Tehran appeared with a fire axe, slashing at the tentacle. Black liquid sprayed out, smelling like 1,000-year-old rot. The tentacle retracted, releasing me. "Vent!" Tehran pulled me up. "We have to go now." We ran through the corridor filled with seawater and debris. All around, the giant creature continued to tighten its grip on the rig. Vent number 7 was located in the center area. When we arrived, I found the cover had been blown off, revealing a pitch-black hole leading down into the sea, and from the pit, dozens of small tentacles were crawling up like snakes. "Must close it!" Tehran yelled. "That's the only way." "How do we close it when there's a bunch of tentacles?" I looked around and saw a fire extinguisher. "Get out of the way!" I yelled, throwing the extinguisher at the tentacles and shooting it. This implies using a flare gun or similar, not the extinguisher itself. If he sprayed it, the next line makes no sense. I will assume he shot it. Boom! It burst into flames. The tentacles retracted with a shrill screech. Ren rushed forward and used all his strength to push the heavy metal lid into place. "Lock it!" he yelled. I twisted the levers with bloody hands. 1, 2, 3. Tentacles started to come out from the gap again. 4, 5, 6 turns. The lid was locked tightly. A loud banging sound came from below, but the thick steel lid held. Immediately, the creature's screech changed from anger to pain. The whole rig shook as it loosened its grip. "It's retreating," Terran breathed a sigh of relief. "The vent is its weak point. When closed, it cannot." The rig suddenly rocked violently. The lights went out. We were thrown into complete darkness. In that darkness, I heard the most terrifying sound. Not one, but hundreds of crazy laughter echoed from every direction. "Not yet," a familiar voice rang out. "It's just the beginning." The emergency lights came on. Standing before us was Edgar Moss, or something resembling him. His crushed body was patched up with tentacles and flesh. Half his face was human skin, the other half was scales and fish eyes. "The rule was broken," the monster said, in a voice that sounded like many people speaking at once. "The price must be paid. All must be paid." Behind him, dozens of black figures appeared from the darkness. All those who had once violated the rules. Ren, Marl, Luca. They had now become monsters, part of the thing under the sea. "Running is meaningless," they said in unison. "Rig 47 is home, is home, is forever." The lights went out again, and in the darkness, the massacre began. I don't remember exactly what happened next, only the screams, the sound of breaking bones, tearing flesh, and blood. So much blood. When I woke up, it was morning. I lay in the medical room, bandages all over my body. Terran sat beside the bed, his left hand bandaged, his left eye blind. "How many?" I asked hoarsely. 6, he replied. 6 survivors out of 18. 12 people died in one night. "The rules," Terran continued wearily. "They're not just there to protect us. They're there to keep the balance. When the balance is broken, it demands a price. So now, Terran looked out the window where the sea had returned to an eerily calm state. "We wait and pray that no one breaks any more rules." But deep down, we both knew that was impossible. On Rig 47, rules were meant to be broken, and the price was always paid in blood. 3 days after the disaster, Rig 47 was still in mourning. The 6 of us survivors worked in silence. The company had sent notice of help, but due to the storm, they were delayed for at least a week. A week on this cursed rig. I was cleaning out the archives when I found it, an old rolled-up map hidden behind a filing cabinet. Curiously, I opened it. "The Sealing Stone," the scrawled text in the corner read. 200 meters below Rig 47. The map detailed the geological structure under the rig with an area marked in red ink, a strange shape like a giant closed eye. "What did you find?" I startled. Terran stood in the doorway, his one eye staring at the map. I'm just cleaning." Terran walked in and snatched the map. His face paled. "Don't dig up the past," he said, his voice trembling. "Some things are better left alone." "What's the Sealing Stone? Why was Rig 47 built on top of it?" Terran was silent for a long moment. "In 1983, the company discovered a huge oil deposit here. But when they drilled, they found something else, a strange rock structure, and inside, no one knew for sure. But since then, strange things started happening. Missing people, strange noises, and dreams. They all dreamed of the same thing, an underwater city where ancient creatures slept. Relay, some called it. And in the center, a creature that had existed since before life on land. The sealing stone was the only thing keeping it dormant, but every time someone died on the platform, the seal weakened. Suddenly, the yellow warning light started flashing, a problem in the waste treatment area. "Let me go check," I said, wanting to get out of this stuffy conversation. The waste treatment area was west of the platform, near the tank B mentioned in Rule 5. The tank was leaking, black oil dripping onto the floor. I looked at the clock, 1:47 a.m. Still safe. The rule said not to dump waste after 2 a.m. I grabbed my tools and started repairing the leak. But as I tried to tighten the valve, my hand slipped. The wrench flew off and hit the emergency drain valve. Damn it! A strong stream of waste oil sprayed into the tank. I quickly closed the valve, but it was too late. I looked at the clock again, 2:03 a.m. "No," I whispered. At first, nothing happened. I stood there, my heart pounding, waiting. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Boom! The tank suddenly burst into flames, a strange black flame. It was cold as ice and gave off no heat. A column of black smoke billowed up, and in the fire, I saw them. Dozens of charred figures writhing in pain. They reached out to me. I recognized some of the faces from old photos, workers recorded as missing. "Save us!" the voice echoed from the fire. Like dozens of people screaming at the same time. A charred hand reached out and grabbed my leg. Where it touched, my pants started to burn with that cold black fire. I screamed in pain. Desperate, I remembered the map in my pocket. There was nothing to lose. I threw the map into the fire. The effect was immediate. The black fire contracted as if in pain. The ghostly hand let me go. A scream echoed from the flames, not of pain, but of anger. "No! The secret must be kept!" The flames flared up 3 times higher, then suddenly died out. The room returned to normal. But on the floor, a message was carved in soot. "It is too late. It is awake." I turned to run but stopped. Tehran was blocking the door. He looked at the burn marks on my leg, then at the message on the floor. "What have you done?" His voice was cold as ice. It was an accident. The oil flooded the tank after 2. "No." Tehran shook his head. "That's not it. You burned the map. You broke the seal." "The map? It was just a map." "It was part of the seal." Tehran stepped in, his eyes wild. "The seal that kept the thing down there asleep, and you just burned it." The rig began to shake, not from the waves, but from deep below. 42 years, Tehran spoke, almost dreamily. 42 years I kept this secret. I followed the rules, sacrificing men to keep it down. And you ruined it all. "We have to do something," I said. "There is a way," Tehran interrupted. He pulled a knife from his pocket. "Blood," he said. "Blood is needed to put it back to sleep. The blood of the one who broke the seal." I backed away. Tehran stepped closer, the knife raised. "I apologize, Kai, but a life for the rig, it's the price to pay." Just then, a roar echoed from underground. The entire platform tilted. "Too late," a voice echoed from all directions, seeming to come from Rig 47 itself. "The seal is broken. The ancient god has awakened. A new era is about to begin." Tehran lowered his knife, his eyes on the cracked ceiling. "Go," he said. "If you want to live, follow me." We ran through warping corridors, the metal groaning and twisting as if the rig were coming to life. When we reached the control room, the other 4 survivors were there. Mark Webb, the electrician, Scarlett, the nurse, Dmitry Volkov, and James Park. All were distraught. "What the hell is going on?" Mark screamed. "The basement is flooded. There's something in there." "Silence." Tehran went to the emergency cabinet, unlocked it, and took out a black leather book. "Listen carefully." He opened the book. 42 years ago, I was one of the first men to set foot on Rig 47. There were 20 of us. After a week, there were only 3. The rig shook again. "We discovered the truth," Terran continued. There is more than oil at the bottom of this sea. There is an ancient city, and in that city, the ancient god, Scarlet whispered, eyes wide. The stories are true. Terran nodded. A creature from prehistoric times. It slept for millions of years until we woke it. So, the rules, I was beginning to understand, were a deal. Blood for blood, life for life. Each rule violator became an offering, keeping the god asleep. But now, he looked at me, the seal is broken. It's about to awaken fully. And when that happens, not just Rig 47, but the whole world. Please, Dmitri begged. There has to be a way. Terran was silent. Then he closed the notebook. There is one way. He turned to the control panel, entered a complex code, and a secret compartment opened, revealing a metal box with an explosive warning symbol. Mini-nuke, Terran said. Enough to blow up the entire rig. If we destroy Rig 47, we can seal the breach and prevent the ancient god from escaping. This is crazy, James shouted. We'll all die. Die? Terran sneered. Look around. We've been dead since we set foot here. The question is how we choose to die. A terrible roar echoed from the depths. The floor cracked open, and through the crack I saw an eye the size of the room, with thousands of tiny pupils spinning frantically. It's too late, the voice echoed in everyone's heads, causing blood to flow from noses and ears. No, Terran roared. He grabbed the box of explosives. I won't let you win. Not after all I've sacrificed. He turned to us. Down to the main structure. Place the explosives on the support pillars. 10 minutes, everything explodes. Terran rushed out of the room. We had no choice. I was assigned to the southern pillar. When I arrived, the seawater was waist high, but it wasn't water. It was pitch black and thick like oil, and hundreds of tiny eyes were shining in it. Kai Seorn, hundreds of whispers rose from the black water. Son of David, your father is waiting. I shook my head, trying to focus. Wading through the murky water, I approached the giant steel pillar. But as I was about to attach the bomb, a hand grabbed my leg. I looked down. I saw Luca, or what he used to be, staring at me with dead white eyes. Don't, Luca croaked. Join us. No pain, no fear down here. I kicked him hard in the face and attached the bomb to the pillar. The timer counted down. 8 minutes. I turned and ran. I saw Scarlet struggling with a swarm of tentacles. Dmitri lay motionless on the floor. James was nowhere to be seen. Scarlet! I rushed over, but I was too late. The tentacles pulled her into the black water. Only Terran and I were left. I found him in the control room, standing by the detonator. Done? He asked. No one else coming back? Scarlet and Dmitri are... I didn't finish. Good, Terran said, shocking me. The fewer survivors, the better. What? Terran turned, a crooked smile on his face. You don't understand. I'm not destroying Rig 47 to stop the old god. I'm doing it to complete the ritual. You're crazy. Crazy? Terran laughed. 42 years I served him. He gave me life for each life I gave. And now that it's about to wake, I'll give it my final gift, the rig, and every soul on it. I lunged for the remote, but Terran was faster. He punched me in the gut. Your father understood, Terran said, pulling me closer to the window. David Seorn, he was one of the 3 survivors that year, but he wanted to break the cycle, so I had to deal with him. You killed my father. Killed him? Terran shook his head. I gave him something better. Immortality. Under the sea, serving the old gods forever. Him, me, and Mark Brick. The 3 survivors of 1983. We made the rules, thought we could control it. Mark escaped, died in a car accident a year later. Or so everyone thought. David, your father, he tried to break the cycle in 1995. I couldn't let that happen. The timer counted down. 2 minutes. "And now," Terran said, opening the window, "it's your turn." He pushed me. "Say hello to your father." Terran roared, "It's all over. A new era is about to begin." One final push. I fell from the window, plunging into the boiling Black Sea below. The last thing I heard was Terran's maniacal laughter and the beeping of the countdown timer. 1 minute, 50 seconds. The water hit my skin like a knife. Darkness was all around. My ears rang. A piercing screech echoed through the water. I tried to swim to the surface, but the undercurrent pulled me deeper. My lungs burned. 30 seconds. I struggled to swim up, but the water around me was thick and slimy. "Son of David, return to us." But something was different. I did not feel the strong pull. Perhaps it was the legacy of my father, one of the first 3 who had a resistance. 20 seconds. Suddenly, a huge black shadow passed by. I saw hundreds of human faces stuck to its skin, all the people lost on Rig 47. 10 seconds. My lungs were about to burst. Just as I was about to give up, a voice rang out in my head, a warm, familiar voice. "Son, don't give up. Bend the snorkel tube. Create bubbles." I looked around frantically and spotted a piece of rubber tubing. I grabbed it and bent it. Small bubbles bubbled up, and the pressure created a gentle push. 5 seconds. I pointed the tube downward, and the bubbles pushed me up. The giant creature turned, opening its cavernous, spiraling mouth. 3 seconds. The surface. I could see it. 2 seconds. I shot out of the water, taking a deep breath. 1 second. 0. The explosion tore through the night. Rig 47 turned into a giant fireball. The shockwave hit me like an invisible wall. When I surfaced again, the rig was a sea of fire. But the most terrifying thing was the scream. From deep below, a terrible roar rang out, not of anger, but of joy. The water began to boil, and then it emerged. There were no words. Part octopus, part dragon, part alien. Its skin was covered in shiny black scales. Hundreds of tentacles the size of submarines stretched out. And its eyes, they weren't eyes. They were holes into another dimension where mad stars danced. The old god had awakened. "Thank you," the voice echoed, not through sound, but directly in the mind. "The final ritual is complete. The blood of 42 years. I understood. The explosion wasn't to stop it, it was to release it. Those who died, they were the final offerings. A tentacle reached out towards me. Just as it was about to reach me, a figure rushed out from under the water. Terran. He was still alive. Half his body burned black. "Mine!" Terran screamed. "My reward! I served you. I deserve it." The tentacle wrapped around Terran instead of me. He laughed madly as he was pulled into the air. "Served," the old god laughed, a sound that made the waves stand on end. "Humans serve nothing but food." The giant mouth opened. I saw inside not a throat, but a dark galaxy with millions of rotating teeth. Terran screamed one last time before being swallowed whole. The ancient god turned to me. "Son of David, the last, but not the end." I didn't understand what it meant until I saw them. Hundreds of ships from all over heading here. On the boats, I saw people with empty eyes, muttering prayers. "The world has heard the call," the old god said. A lifeboat from Rig 47 drifted past. I used the last of my strength to swim to it. The old god didn't stop me. It just watched, amused. "Live and tell them. Spread fear. Fear makes the food taste better." Then it sank, leaving the sea eerily calm. I was left adrift in a sea of fire and death. The sun was beginning to rise, and in that weak light, I saw them. Thousands, millions of dark shapes moving beneath the water. The invasion, the apocalypse had begun. And I, Kai Seorn, the last survivor of Rig 47, was the first witness. I lay in the lifeboat. Tears streamed down my cheeks. "Son," the voice spoke again, soft and sad. "Father," I whispered. "Warn them. That's the only thing you can do now." "Warn the world?" I nodded numbly. Even though I knew no one would believe me, I had to try. For those who died, for my father, for all of humanity. The U.S. Navy Coast Guard cutter USS Tempest spotted me at 7:34 a.m. "You are lucky," Captain Scarlett Morrison said when I woke up in the medical room. "We received a report of a major explosion. Rig 47 had 18 people on file. We searched, but only found you." "All dead," I said hoarsely. "The cause of the explosion?" How could I tell her? "A technical failure," I lied. "A gas leak caused the explosion." Morrison nodded, seemingly satisfied. For the next 3 days, I retold the prepared story. But at night, lying in bed, I heard them, whispers from the deep. When the ship docked in San Diego, reporters were waiting. "Kai Seorn, how did it feel to be the only survivor? Was it the company's negligence?" I pushed through the crowd. The police escorted me to the station for an official statement, but there was one person who didn't believe me. "Detective Seorn," Daniel Lee called me back after the interrogation. He was an Asian man in his 50s. "I read Rig 47's file. 12 disappearances in the past 5 years, an accident rate 3 times higher than other platforms, and reports workers complained of strange noises. Someone even mentioned a list of strange rules." I tried to keep my face calm. Lee interrupted. "Your father, David Seorn, went missing in 1995 on the Phoenix 12 rig, only 50 nautical miles from Rig 47. I was silent. "I know you're hiding something, but if there's something out there, people need to know." I looked straight into his eyes. "Inspector Lee, there are truths better left buried at the bottom of the sea." He looked at me for a long time and nodded. I was released. I sat on the sofa in my small apartment, looking out the window at the sea, trying not to think about what was lurking under the water. The media continued to report on the Rig 47 case for several weeks, but gradually the story faded. Only I could not forget. Every night the nightmares returned. I saw Luca, Marl, and Terran laughing as the ancient god swallowed him. My ears started to have problems. The doctor said my eardrum was punctured. I had constant tinnitus, hearing sounds that didn't exist. But I knew the truth. Those distant screeches were real. The ancient god was still out there. 6 months later, I received an anonymous package. Inside was a black leather notebook identical to the one Terran had. It was full of rules. Hundreds of pages of rules for hundreds of different locations. Not just drilling rigs, but ships, lighthouses, even some coastal towns. The last page had only one line written in red ink. "You know the truth. Join us in stopping it, or wait for the end of the world." No signature, just an eye symbol with thousands of pupils, identical to the ancient god's eye. Accompanied by an address: Warehouse 12, Boardwalk, Dark Street, midnight. Come alone. I knew this could be a trap, but it could also be the only chance. For a few weeks, I tried to forget it, but the news started to come in. A fishing boat went missing off the coast of Alaska. 20 people. A lighthouse in Maine was deserted. Reports of strange creatures, of strange songs from the deep that drove listeners crazy. I knew the ancient god was spreading. A year after Rig 47, I sat on a San Diego beach watching the sunset. "I will go back," I whispered to the wind, "not as a victim, but as one who knows. I will find those like me, and we will fight. Maybe it is madness. Maybe there is no way to stop what has slept for millions of years, but I must try." As I stood up to leave, I saw it. A small tentacle, no bigger than a human arm, rising from the water and disappearing.